Hey everyone, in this last video of my QBCraft playlist series, I'm going to show you how to go ahead and model and UV map a unique object. So when I say unique object, I mean something that is not a cube like the other traditional body parts of these characters. So in this case for Garfield, it's going to be his ears and his tail. But this would also work for things like characters' weapons or maybe pieces of clothing, things like that. Garfield also has these little whiskers here. I'm not going to cover those, but those would be done with the exact same technique. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to press numpad 1 and get into my front view so I can focus on the ears here. And what we're really going to do is we're going to focus on the power of a single vertex. So what you want to do is you want to come up here to the Edit menu, Preferences, go to Add-ons over here on the left, and you want to search up here in the top right-hand corner. You want to type in the word extra. And we want to enable, turn on the little checkbox here, this add-on called Add Mesh Extra Objects. There's another one here called Add Curve. Make sure you get Add Mesh Extra Objects. Check that on and then close the box. Okay, so now we want to put our 3D cursor up here where the object is. So I'm going to press Shift right mouse click, and the 3D cursor appears near the ears. I'm then going to press Shift A, and I'm going to go to Add Mesh, and down here below the monkey object, you'll now see that you have a whole bunch of extra objects, and these are the ones we just enabled. And so what we want is this one right here, single vertex. And we're going to choose Add Single Vert. And so it adds it in there, and it's a little tough to see, but you can see up here in the top right-hand corner, it does say Vert. So what you have to make sure you do, and I oftentimes forget this, is you have to make sure that you are in vertex select mode. You can't be in edge mode or face mode because then you won't be able to work with or even see vertices. So once you're in vertex mode, you can go ahead and select your vertex, and we're going to press G and grab it, and you can see I made mine a little bit larger so you could see it on the screen. And then with your vertex selected, we're just going to use the extrude tool. So every time I press E, I'm extruding out a new edge and a new vertex. And that's what you're going to keep doing. So you just press E, move your mouse, E, move your mouse. Now on really curved objects like his ears, the more vertices you create and more extrusions you do, the curvier this object will be. So you have to determine how much time you have. Of course, you don't want 200 vertices for something like an ear, but you also don't want 4 either. Okay, so we're just going to keep going here. And because his ears kind of go back here, I think I'm going to go ahead and make them one single object. I could make them 2, but I'm going to kind of go ahead and go across here and then just E and keep going here. Okay, so I finished extruding, and before we continue, let's say you look at this and you realize it's a little too rough, and you wish you had come back here and you had an extra vertex in between 2 of the existing ones. You don't have to undo. What you can do is you're going to click, shift click between the 2 vertices that you want a new one, a new vertex, and then if you simply, with those 2 selected, if you right mouse click, you'll get a menu that pops up, and you can choose Subdivide. And if you choose Subdivide, it will divide between the 2 equally, and you'll get a brand new one right here. And now you can press G and grab that and move it around and get a much smoother result. I'm going to undo that. Okay, so I now have my profile for the ears. And so what I'm going to do is once I'm done with all my extrusions, I'm going to press A to make sure I have them all selected. I'm now going to press F to fill or make a face. And there is my shape. Okay, so again, you can see it from the front view. Okay, so now on to UV mapping, and then we'll just do one more step and we'll be done. So I'm going to go up here to the UV editing tab, and because the ears are not a cube, they're going to be handled in a different way than all of our other body parts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here on the right hand side, and I'm going to go to the materials tab. I'm going to create a brand new material, and for this one I'm going to call them ears. Then I'm going to come down here where it says base color, click on the yellow dot, and I'm going to choose image texture like we've done in the past. I'm then right down here where you load up your image, I'm just going to click on this first little button, to the left of the New button, and I'm going to choose my Garfield image. So now I need to unwrap it. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to press the letter U, and you're going to see that you have the whole unwrap menu here. What we want is we want project from view. If you've never used this before, what happens is, let me show you what happens. If I choose project from view here, you'll see that I'm at an angle here. Notice that I was at a perspective when I did that. And so when it comes in, you'll see that it comes in with this weird angle over here as it's unwrapped. So what we want to do is we want to be in either the front view or the side view. It's going to be one of those two. So numpad 1 or numpad 3. I'm going to do numpad 1. So I'm looking at it from the front view. Then I'll press U for unwrap, and I'll choose project from view. And now we get a perfectly nice and flat unwrapping. Now we can come here into the UV window, and I can press G, and I can grab it, and S to scale it down. And you can see it's starting to look better over there on the right. Okay, so now what you're going to do is you're going to be pressing G to try to get it right. So now if you can finish it by pressing scale, that's going to help you out. So we can only scale in 2 axes. We can scale on the X-axis, and we can scale on the Y-axis. So I'm going to press S and then X, and then I'm going to scale it out till it looks about right. Then S and then Y. And if you're wondering why is it the Y-axis, shouldn't it be the Z-axis because I'm going up? Well, you have to remember that the UV editing window is 2-dimensional. It's flat. So there is no third dimension when you're doing UV mapping. It's just X and Y. And so there we are. Okay, so this should look pretty good. It's off by a little bit, but not by much. Okay. All right, so again, you could come in here and you can see my vertices are off by a little tiny bit. We could scale this down on the Y-axis a little bit. Okay, now obviously you can select individual UVs here and grab them and move them and just really tweak it and make it all fine. I'm going to go ahead and say that this is done for now. Now, the very last step, if you want to make this even nicer, is that you could extrude this face. So I'm going to go ahead and over here on the right-hand side, in my 3D window, I'm going to go ahead and go to Face Select, and I'm going to select that single face. And if I press E, and then I drag it out a little bit and give it a little thickness, just something like that, I'm going to extrude it out about what looks like 1 inch or so. Now, if I tab into back into object mode, you'll see that my ears now have a little bit of thickness. They're a little bit more 3-dimensional. Okay, let me go ahead and hide my reference image so you can just focus on the ears there. Okay, so there are my Garfield ears. Yeah, and you can see there's a little bit of the eyes poking through there a little bit. So again, I could tweak the UVs, or I could maybe move it down a little bit. Okay, so there we go. So that's exactly how I would go ahead and do that. I would just spend a little bit more time on it. So for any other object, like say the tail, you'd just repeat this exact same process. You would come in here, you would go to a front view, most likely. You'd press Shift, right mouse click, get the 3D cursor in there, Shift A, add a mesh, go to single vert, add a single vertex, make sure you're in vertex select mode, select that vertex, G. Now if you are doing something like this that has another side, like the tail or a weapon or something like that, you really only need to model half of it. So I would just model this. And again, just repeat. So E to extrude, and then on the curvy parts, just press E and do more extrusions, and you'll be pretty much good to go. Okay, so to finish up the process, and again, if you already know the technique, you can stop the video here, but I'm going to select them all. I'm going to press F to make a face. I'm going to go ahead and give it a material, give it an image texture, make sure it's the Garfield texture. I'm going to go into my front view, U to unwrap, project from view. In the UV window, scale it down, grab it, get it all set up. So the one thing I will add before I finish this here is sometimes when you are scaling and you're scaling in the X and the Y axis, it still just doesn't work out. And I mentioned that you can move around single vertices, or sorry, single UVs over here. But if you have to grab a bunch, that's where box select comes in handy. So again, in your UV window, you can press B for box select, and you can click and drag out a selection and grab a whole bunch. And then you can just press G, and you can see that I can come in here and I can maybe scale these down a little bit. I can rotate them. I can do whatever I want. Yeah, that works out really well. Okay, so that looks pretty good to me. I'm then going to come over here. I'm going to go into face mode, and then I'll select the one face. I'll press E and I'll extrude, and I'll give it a little bit of an extrusion there. And you can see that when you do that technique, when you extrude, you can see it looks good from the front. You can see it looks good from the back. And on the side is where technically it does get a little stretching, but in the case of these little objects, they're pretty straightforward. It's not very much. So for a little papercraft style character like this, it's real easy to do. Okay, so I hope this video helped you out, and I will see you next time. Thanks, everyone.